Hey, what's up? I'm Kirk of Effectatron, and I'm excited to tell you that Cinema 4D has updated to 24.1, and with it actually comes a huge jump in performance for dynamics, which actually makes me really excited because now finally we're getting to the point where we can do like granular dynamics, and I'll show you how to do that today. So go ahead and go to Maxon 1, go to 24.1 and update that. Big shout out to Orion Pax in the Discord for telling me the update was today. Another big shout out to Mr. Exocomp, who posted in the Discord that this is what David McGavran said back in September. Here he shows the viewport of 3.69 frames per second, whereas coming soon it was 12 point whatever frames per second, and he says that is happening now. So basically, viewport dynamics have just become 4 times faster in an update. This probably was supposed to be there at launch, which is probably why they didn't like advertise how much better the dynamics were as hard as they should have, in my opinion, because they weren't where they wanted them to be. So right now, they're now pretty awesome. So go ahead and update that. If you are on the fence about updating to 2024, if you use dynamics, yes, the rigid body dynamics is worth it alone. And now that they work really well, we can do cool stuff like this. So basically, I just have a bunch of buildings thrown into a Voronoi fracture, which is, of course, set to the key to this is to create points per object. Without that, throwing everything into one fracture just really like freaks it out and makes them kind of weird. But if you say 100 points per object, which now we have, what, I think 7 objects, or 9 objects, which is 900 points, which is a lot to do dynamics for. And then we have Godzilla, of course, who's from Sketchfab. I brought him in. I haven't messed with his textures really at all. So they're a little funky, but let's just go ahead. All I've done is I've animated him walking through here, and I'm actually going to delete that. Actually, let's just hit play. Just hit play. I've done this tutorial so many times today. Watch. Bam! Raw, Godzilla smashing through. You're like, that's neat. I guess that's pretty cool. I guess that's faster. It's kind of disappointing, right? But that's okay because it does get faster, and I'll show you how. When you do an Voronoi fracture, you're not using multi-instance or anything like that. So if you really wanted to do this, you need to do some trickery. But let's just go ahead and play around with this. And rather than doing a bunch of buildings and Godzilla, bye-bye Godzilla, let's use this car, which I grabbed from Sketchfab. It's a Blender model. I took it into Blender, exported it out as an FBX, brought it into Cinema 4D, changed all the materials to Redshift, and for whatever reason, my lights aren't working on it, but that's fine. We'll go ahead and get rid of that. And basically, actually, that's fine. We'll go ahead and say render object. So you can take a look at this. And there's a few tips that I want to cover that are going to help with viewport performance when using dynamics, as well as when we start using like a ton of dynamics, we'll really get into it. So pretty cool. My lights, I didn't import copy over correctly. That's okay. It's not a big deal for this example. But what I want to show you is display and lines. You can see this isn't a low poly object. There's actually quite a bit of geometry here. So doing dynamics with this, we need to be careful, right? Well, not in 2024. So I say that with a grain, take that with a grain of salt. You can't go crazy. I've crashed it so many times today. I've hit Control, Alt, Delete far too many times today. So we're going to go ahead and hold Alt and click it in here. And the main thing that's going to make a huge difference in dynamics is using multi-instance over instance. And this is also going to help with render time. Using multi-instance is going to be your fastest option for dynamics as well as render time. It's just going to make it exponentially faster. The only issue is, let's say we were doing something with like spheres or balls or whatever, and we wanted to take our cloner and throw it into a volume builder. It's not going to recognize render instance or multi-instance. So you need to just use instance for that. Okay, so those are limitations of the cloner, but if we're not using the volume builder, we can do that. But just keep in mind the fact that we can do a lot more objects now means that we can actually just use instances on lower poly objects, and then maybe do some dynamics on them and like turbulence or something. And then you throw that in a volume builder, turn the smoothing, take it into a mesh builder, and then you have a liquid blobs running around that maybe you couldn't do before. So pretty cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and just talk about just how fast this is working with high poly objects. So we're gonna go 10, 10, and 10, which is like a million objects. Now we'll go 20, 20, 20 here. And we just wanna make sure that we slide these up. We don't want them to be touching together. And we don't want to be touching this way either. It's a little longer. There we go. All right, so we've got our army of cars here. We've got our car dealership. And we're just going to raise this up above the ground. And we're just going to right-click, simulation, rigid body. Now, one way to make sure that your viewport and stuff goes faster is get off of this display mode. Garage shading is the slowest one. What you want to do is probably go to constant shading without lines. Boom. And it's going to make dynamics work way, way faster. So just by default, let's go ahead and just hit play. And you think, okay, it's going to take a few seconds. Oh, it's already going. We did it. Just like that. And now you have a cool desktop background instantly. Obviously, you'd want to fix the light material, but there you go. In case you were looking for it, that's it. Boom. Really cool though, right? So let's just do something else really quick just to showcase how much faster these are. Big sphere here. We're going to go ahead and grab that, throw a collider body on that, and we'll hit play. And we're just going to live drag our sphere into our cars. I had way too much fun with this. How awesome is that though? So cool. So that definitely could not do that in 2023. Okay. So let's just go ahead and, for the sake of example, go back to our garage shading, hit play on this without the sphere, and 1,000, 2,000. And then you can see how much slower the viewport is, right? Okay. So what's the fastest? Lines? Probably not. No, you would think it would, but it's just maybe quick shading. Probably constant shading though. Yeah, constant shading, play, no lines, boom, look how much faster that is. So when you're doing dynamics, you want to set it in that setting. That's going to help your viewport speed a lot. I hate the fact that they slide around. It drives me crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and tune my collider and set the rigid body friction of this up to 1.5. And now hopefully they won't slide around. I don't know why that bugs me so much, but it just does. I feel like by default things shouldn't be so slippery. Look at that. It's so satisfying. Okay, so now that we figured out that we can like do stuff pretty cool with very high poly models, I mean, you have to think about this. This is what, 10 times 10 times 10, which if we do that math in my head real quick, that's like 1,000. I knew that. I didn't need to pull it up on the monitor. Oh, it's not on the side monitor. But so we're doing that times however many polygons these cars have, which that's just, it's definitely more than 51. But we've got like lots and lots of polygons here that we're working really well in really quick time. So let's go ahead and talk about how to create something like this, where we have kind of a granular level of stuff where we can create these cool, satisfying, right? So let's go ahead and set this up real quick. Because I don't want this tutorial to be super long because it's more of an overview, but I do want you to get something out of it, okay? So what we want to do is we're going to go ahead and create a tube. We'll set our tube to be about 10 in the height. We'll say 20 in the radius and 25 in the outer radius. So we just have this little tube here. Not bad. We'll say 64 for the rotation segments, and we'll fillet it, and we'll make our fillet like 0.5, so it's smaller. Cool. I'm happy with that. I don't care that it's clipping through the ground. I do care. Let's bring it up. Okay, we brought it up. And now we're going to go ahead and create spheres. And we're going to make these really small, like 1 centimeter. That's probably too big still. Let's go ahead and say 0.5. Okay, and we can make our tube bigger maybe. Let's make our tube bigger. Let's say 80 by 75. So now we have a big tube here. So with these spheres, they're going to look really small. What I want to do is I want to change this to icosahedron. And the cool thing about this is if we look at the display here, that's a lot. That's way too much. We can come all the way down to like 4 and we get like a dodecahedron looking shape. And basically we can run all of our simulations with this, and they're pretty much going to be close enough to our final logic that once we're done with it, we can crank it back up and make it round again. So we're saving a bunch of time by making it less polygons when we run the simulation and so forth. So back in the day when you had to use bullet dynamics, if you wanted to collide something this small with something that had these big of polygons, you would need to really subdivide your floor. But what happens is, and I did it in an earlier test, was I had a whole bunch of objects in a cloner, like our sphere here. We're going to hold Alt, put that in a cloner, set it to multi-instance, and we'll do 25 by 25 by 25. And because it is how much radius of 0.5, that means the diameter is 1, so we need to make everything at least 1 apart. So we got 1.1, 1.1, 1.1. So now we have all of these spheres. They're not touching. We're definitely going to need more than this, but we're going to go ahead and right click this, go to animation, simulation, and rigid body. And our tube will go to simulation, and we'll go to collider and up the friction of that to 2 and take the bounciness off. I don't want those to bounce. I'm going to control click and drag that onto our backdrop as well, which is just our floor. So when we hit play on this, they should just fall down. And basically if this was bullet tags, those would just clip right through the floor. But they're actually not. They're actually hitting the floor and piling across, which is fantastic. That's a pretty good pile of sand. Let's go somewhere in between for our tube here, because we don't want to break it by trying to do too much. So we're just going to say divide by 2, which is 40. I can do that math in my head, 35. There we go. So we'll do something like that. And the cool thing is if we come in here and, maybe we would think we would need to up the subdivision of that. So I had like a plane in there and I subdivided a bunch. And when I hit play, we hit our collision limit. And I thought it was because of my spheres, but it's not because of my spheres. It was actually because of the floor. So the fact that the new simulation system works on the way that the substeps work here inside of the simulation tab is all these default settings are actually pretty good. And it just pretty much works. And you don't need near as much geometry as you used to, which is great for running simulations, which allows it to go faster. So that's fantastic. So the first thing we're going to do is just turn our dampening up to like 4%. I think that's a little better. And we're just going to come in here and just stack a few more on top. We'll do like 40 here. And we'll bring that up. And we'll just hit play. And it's going to come down. Splash out. And it's probably going to get to the edge and not quite touch the edge, which is going to bother me. And the reason that's happening is because of our default thickness value. Now, normally these things can be fixed just by adjusting the scale of your scene, but I am actually going to go in here, and inside of this, we have a thickness value default of 1.5. I don't want that. I want 0.1. Really, really small, narrow window. So basically, it's just like, think of it as boundary boxes in Unreal Engine. If you've ever seen collisions and stuff in there, and the way video games do it is rather than actually using the actual geometry, it creates like a shape or a border, an invisible border around it. Like think of it like a little force field bubble. That's what it's using the collisions for. And right now we were adding a 1.5 centimeter thick wall around all of our objects, which we didn't need to do. So now we hit play. It's going to go through. It might take a little bit longer because it's trying to be a little more accurate, but we'll be able to fall down, go all the way to the edge now, ta-da, and come in here and kind of settle down. Now, if you ever have to deal with the fact that these things are like jiggling around a whole bunch in here, the way to fix that is actually inside of this as well. So we're going to the dynamics tag, go down to dynamics, and here at the bottom is deactivation. And it's basically a threshold that's like, okay, once it gets to this, it's not moving this far anymore, it's going to shut off. But if we right click this and go to help, which in case you didn't know, you can do that. It does tell you that it's 2 speed thresholds, but whatever, but they will remain simulated until it's below that threshold for 2 seconds. So if you're trying to do something quick, it's always going to take at least 2 seconds to settle down. So it's kind of lame, especially when we're trying to do such a short simulation here, but we would just need to add extra time to give it that chance to settle down. So let's go ahead and add in a few more frames. Let's do like 90 more. And now we'll back it up and we will just raise this threshold up pretty much all the way. So basically that's going to mean once our objects aren't moving 100 centimeters or aren't rotating 100 degrees based on velocity for at least 2 seconds, they're going to deactivate. So they should settle in. So we'll see. We'll hit play on this. It should be close, and dampening is the other one that might make this a little better, as well as smoothing iterations. There's just so many moving pieces to this stuff that it's just kind of annoying that things that look like they should fix it, like deactivation, they don't always do it because there are other parts. So it's tricky to figure out because see, nothing's moving that as much as we told it to, but it is finally starting to settle down, and we're looking pretty good now. Pretty good. Oh, but not great. Maybe we need to make this really small. I don't think that's what we need to do, but we'll try it. It's going faster. Spreading out. We're still having some movement and stuff. We're still probably just 1 second after now, and then we got to wait for a whole another second before it'll start deactivating, and we'll see if it really does deactivate or not. Doesn't seem to be deactivating. I think it was working better, So kind of lame that it doesn't quite work like I want it to. But here's the cool part about the new dynamic system is you can say set the initial state. So we're going to say set initial state. And now when we go back to frame 0 and hit play, it's already there. Boom. We don't have to wait for it to fall down, fill it up. So we can actually just start with it right here, which is what we want. Perfect. So we can set these back to default. Default, right click, default. Cool. So now what we can do is we can actually come in here and we can see if it looks like this. We'll add a new material on here and we'll throw that on we'll do the white one on the tube. There we go. And we can take a look at this real quick. You can see, you know, it's low poly and that's why we're able to get rid of it. But the cool thing is, or render it fast, but we come in here and up it and ta-da, now they're all round and it didn't take any time at all to render it out because it's totally fine. It's just working well. So we can always go back to that and come back to that. So anyway, here we go. We've got this set at our initial state. Another thing we can do is come in here to the collision aspect of this and make it sticky. So we're going to say a stickiness value of 1. And then we're going to come in here with a cylinder. And we're going to say a radius about 4 and a height of maybe 10. And we're going to bring it up 0.5. There we go. So it's on the floor. And we'll probably go like 2 with the radius. Take this, throw this in a cloner. Set this cloner to linear and change it from the Y to X. Let me start sliding that up and you'll start to see kind of what we're going for here. We can say maybe 8 and hit that and we'll spread them out maybe 10. Yeah. So now we have like these spheres in here and what we're going to do is we're going to keyframe that and we're going to go back to 90 frames per second. Because we don't need to wait for that time anymore because we already are set our initial state. We'll go to frame 90 and what we're gonna do is hit R and rotate this, hold shift 360 degrees and keyframe that. Now we want that to be smooth. So we're gonna go in here to the timeline, F curve and just hit linear while we have that selected still. That's gonna give it a constant velocity. So now we can grab this same friction setting from our tube, set it on our cloner by holding control, clicking, dragging. Now, when we hit play, we should get this nice cool effect where these cylinders are just kind of squished through our sand and it's going to act more like sand because we made it sticky. So you can see how it's going to create that cool little path behind it. Just like that. Which is just oddly satisfying, right? So good. And you can make that longer and make it go through and like you could let this go halfway through and then set the initial state, you know, so you can really tweak it. We kind of just shoved them in there. So it makes sense that it's not like perfect, but we can still come in here, change this to 32 and make these like so. Redshift render view, perfect. Play. Cool. Now, if you wanted to, what we could do is maybe come in here to this object. It's on our spheres here and type in round and do round corners. Let the asset browser think and go ahead and grab that, plug that straight into the bump map, isolate that view. And you can see it's going to create this like bridge between it, which is going to kind of look like it's going to connect all of our shapes for us, which should give us a pretty interesting result when we take it off the isolation. And they're going to look like they're kind of clipping, like pushing it and melding into each other versus pulling apart, which also is going to give it that effect that maybe they're like squishy. It's going to look more like they're squishy versus just clipping into each other. So that's kind of a cool way to trick that. Another thing you could do, obviously, is rather than just doing one color sphere, we could come in here and do something like multiple spheres. When you originally make your cloner, set it to random, and then you have two different colors or multiple colors, and then you would mix them together, which would be a cool effect. But obviously you can come in here and just do something cool like probably transmission. We'll crank that up to like be blue, and then we'll do like a green depth. Maybe we'll make it about halfway through. Come out here to the thin film, crank that up, and this up as well, and then turn our metalness value up halfway as well. We'll get a pretty cool looking material. We might have too much depth, but we'll see. It's pretty cool. Crank this back up. Creepy. It's a weird one. Let's take this off. And let's take this off as well. And just do transmission. Might look better. There we go. And we'll do more depth. We should just get like a kind of a cool vibe. Also, the transmission with the round corners is probably going to make it look cooler. Let's turn that off. And just use a blue transmissive object. Yeah, and that's going to give us an interesting look as well. But that with the round corners should give us kind of this goopy goo look, which is neat. But let's just undo that and do a brand new material on there. Keep it pretty basic. Same as that. We'll just make it like a white. Maybe like a white like that. And pretty cool. So you can see you get a pretty satisfying vibe from that. And it's rendering well and playing back fast. And you could come in here and, you know, do all kinds of stuff with it, which is cool. But look, we're actually like seeing it real-time playback with thousands of particles. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pause. And obviously the stickiness value could be affected, but it's pretty neat. You also can come in here and add things like attractors, rotation, whatever you want. Like let's say we didn't want to do these cylinders. We'll turn those off and get those out of there. Go back to frame 0. And we can come in here and simulate forces and do like a rotation in here. And rotation always rotates on the Z, as I learned from EJ from iDesign. And so we're going to do that. And we're going to crank that up and do a force. And now when we hit play, should twirl those around. They're kind of sticky, so they may not twirl as much. And these values, as far as like the speed of these, make 0 sense to me. I never know if they're exponential or what. It feels like they are. But there we go. Look, we're twisting around. Everything's stuck together, which is kind of cool. But let's take that stickiness off, take that down to 0, put a bounciness to like 0.5, and maybe we'll get a completely different result. It's pretty cool that we have this like baseline to start from, and it is working, and we can actually try these things. This was definitely not possible in 2023, so I will say 2024.1. Good job. Way to go. You did it. Yeah, let's crank this up. Like 100 apparently is enough. Let's do 500. You'd think it'd be 5 times faster. We'll see. It might be 5,000 times faster. I don't really understand. Suspense. Looks like we just spun it into the ground. So, not that cool. But obviously, you could come around and play with that. We also could come in here, say Control D. This is the last thing I'll do. And we'll say Scene, Gravity, set it to 0. And then we'll go to Simulate Forces, Turbulence. Crank that up and switch it to Force. And that should give us kind of a cool result. It should just be like start floating around. He said with confidence. Okay, that's too much. 2. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Imagine. Go. There we go. So now we've just got this cool floaty particle in this going on. Oh, I'm also doing this at 32 segments, so it's going to go way faster now. If I go back to 4 and try it again, I was still doing it with all of these segments. So it's like, what, 18 times more exponentially. So yeah, there we go. So now, you know, in theory, maybe you can do like a small isolated scene and create some cool like foam from a splash or something, but just create really cool particle effects just like that. And that's cool. We definitely couldn't do this much and have it play back and the time it's playing back and stuff like that in 2023. So I am excited that they actually are making it faster and more of a feasible or direct thing that we can do. which is pretty cool. Blub. Looks weird. But yeah, so pretty cool. I like the sand thing better. But yeah, so now you know, just hopefully you learned some tips and tricks into, you don't really have like a finished product after this. It's more of like, hopefully now you can go in there and start using it and troubleshoot and figure some things out. So if you liked it and it was helpful and you're excited about 2024.1, leave a like and subscribe on the video. But more importantly, comment, because that helps the algorithm. But yeah, do that. And if you like Godzilla, give me a thumbs up. Thanks. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. See ya.